So, if we are practicing Vipassana regularly, it does increase our awareness about ourselves significantly. Yeah. And you would start to realize that there are different states inside our mind that has a different effect on the practice. Yeah. And our actions are the primary reason how we get into these different states, right? That's why these following precepts are super important. So, if I observe inside myself, right, there is few different states, especially like in my case I would say there's three clear states that I see that I'm in, right? And it's and once we have a better understanding of these states, we can, arrange our practice more properly, right? So on the lowest level, if I would say, in the lowest level is the state where you're not feeling inspired, you're not feeling motivated, right? When you're practicing, it's not really producing any result, right? Somehow you're going through the practice, and if you are doing the practice altogether, right? So very uninspired state, basically, right? It's very hard to do the practice in that state. And generally, what happens is, if I am engaging in mindless entertainment of some sort, right, watching YouTube or something, of or if I'm not really, or if I'm engaging a lot into sense oriented pleasure, whether it's food or some other form of sense oriented pleasure, right, that leads to this state where you become more like inertia, right, where you become more dull, right? And you don't feel like practicing meditation. You don't really, even if you're practicing in the meditation, you don't really doing the right kind of meditation, right? You're just sitting through the practice somehow. And it is just not a very conducive state to practice, right? So that is one state. And then there's another state, let's say, when I'm very clear and I'm very focused, and when I know like what I need to do, and I'm disciplined and I'm doing all the things, right? In this state, when I'm practicing, the practice is very fruitful. Not, I mean, the effort is very fruitful, right? You are creating the very right conditions and causes to progress in the practice, right? So you're putting the effort, and you're putting the right kind of effort. You're really trying to practice the way you were taught to practice, right? So in that state, generally practicing for an hour or 40 minutes or whatever time I have decided is not a problem, right? You can easily practice properly for that time, and you're easily putting the effort, and you enjoy the practice, and you're feeling the sense of progress, right? When I'm in that state, right? And then there is a state where you're feeling more or less calm and content. You're not feeling like a strong desire for anything. And in that state, when you're practicing, it's not only like you can practice properly, but also you can easily get into a deeper meditations and more profound insights, more or less, right? So the point is basically like there are different states inside ourselves, right? And when we are in these different states, we need to calibrate our practice according to that, right? And we also need to understand how do we get into these states, right? There could be different reasons, but one of the primary reason is our actions, right? So I know very well, like if I'm engaging into, let's say, sense oriented pleasure, or if I'm engaging into mindless entertainment, or if I'm engaging into any kind of unhealthy pleasure, right, it will lead to this kind of a state where it's very hard to do the meditation practice, right? And if we have that realization at least, right, and if somehow we get into that state, then probably the big then probably the one thing is we need to realize is that we are in that state, right? And then the second thing, we need to understand like what we can actually do in that state, right? What we are capable of doing in that state, right? So just sitting through the meditation practice of 1 hour, 40 minute, 20 minute, whatever time we are doing is a success. If I'm in that state, right? It's not really wise for me to expect that I can really make, really have a deep insight when I'm in that state doing meditation, right? So just sitting through the practice in that time is a big success, right? And trying to get out of that state as quickly as possible, right? Meditation is one of those actions that will get you out of that state, even though you're not feeling good, but it will get you out of that state as soon as possible, right? So let's say if I find myself in that state, I would focus on, first of all, how do I know that I'm in that state, right? Obviously, you know when you're in that state, but because you are in that kind of a mindset, it's difficult to reason with yourself, right? So one of the clear marker is your food, right? You can observe like what kind of food you're eating, and very likely you're not going to be eating very healthy food when you're in that state, right? And the way I see, we need to set up certain practices to be quickly climb out of that state if we somehow jump into that state, right? So some of the practices that I would do is like make sure that meditation happen, even if I can reduce the time, right? If I'm doing 1 hour, I can reduce to 40 minutes, but the meditation must happen every day. Quality is irrelevant in that point. If I could do exercise of some sort, if I could do yoga, and if I could, practice whatever kind of exercise I'm practicing that time, that would be super helpful, right? And probably like focusing on eating healthy food or doing a fast or something like that kind of help you to climb out of that state pretty quickly, right? And once you are out of that state, the next state is where you are like you have a clarity, you have a direction, you have a clear goal in your life, you understand like what you are, you're focused and you're driven and you are clear, right, more or less. And when you're in that state and when you are doing your meditation practice in that state, generally this is the time to make progress, this is the time to put the right effort into the practice, right? So for example, if uh, I'm able to focus on the breath for 10 seconds, right, and I'm practicing anapana, for example, this is the time to actually progress in the practice and move to the 15-second, 20-second, right? So it's not enough if you're in that state where you're clear and you're focused and you have that energy going on to just sit through the practice. You must be putting the right effort and you must make progress, right, in that state. And there is not so many, so there's not so many stuff that we need to sort out basically in this state, right? We need to be clear, but there's just basically you need to sort out your health and finance and relationship. And everybody has a different interest. Somebody's in the sport, somebody's in the some other kind of interest, but we kind of have to just sort out these few things and channel our energy into our primary goal, right? Whether it's something else at the moment or it could be meditation, right? But more or less, this is like a really good state to be progressing in our practice and sorting out our life in general, right? So that is like I would say second state, right? And this actions, right action in this state kind of leads you to the next state, which is more or less like, you're already feeling satisfied. There's nothing really fundamentally dragging you down, right? Like your health, you're not taking care of your health or you're not taking care of finance. They kind of start to pull you down into the worldly life again and again, right? So if you done, if you use your energy properly in this second state kind of a thing, then it creates the right conditions to be in the third stage for longer time, right? Because you're feeling content and satisfied, and meditation has its own effect, right, which is like making your mind peaceful. And then when you're practicing the meditation, it can lead to much deeper meditation, right? And you can progress uh, further into the field of insights, right? So like the point basically I want to make is we need to understand where we are and set up some sort of practices and some sort of mechanism. So when we find ourselves in somewhat lower state, we move forward. And when we are finding ourselves into the kind of state where we are energetic and we have focus, then we use that to progress in the meditation. And when we find ourselves into the more subtle and calm state, letting go of the effort and kind of moving forward in the insights, right? And also, like, really important to understand that our actions are the real cause, or at least the primary cause for us to moving in these different states, right? And unfortunately, the world is designed in a way that if we are not guarding ourselves, it's very, very easy to live in this kind of a numb zombie state where, uh, it's not really conducive for progressing in meditation, and it's not really conducive to live a generally good life, right? And but unless we put an effort, right, and unless we have something where we are guarding ourselves from it, that's just the default, right? The senses has the nature to be attracted from this to the sense object, right? So unless you put a good practice of healthy eating, you're going to eat unhealthy food, right? And same thing with the mindless entertainment of these YouTube and all these things. uh, I shouldn't say YouTube because you're probably watching YouTube, but all these different mindless entertainment, right? Like TikTok or shorts and reels and all these things, or Netflix and movies and all these things, right? They are all addictive, right? And there is incentive for these people to create these products, right? And as a byproduct, like, unless you guard yourself, you're naturally going to end up doing these things, right? There's a natural pull to do all these things. And the more you do this thing, the more you get into the state where it's just not possible for the meditation to progress in the meditation, right? So having that understanding and having that clarity at least, and slowly making our life aligned, right, where we can practice conducively, is really important, right? It cannot, like, we cannot just brute force our way through meditation and all these things, right? You have to be more systematic, and you have to be more uh, have a more long-term vision to kind of progress properly in the practice, right?